Welcome to Apropos. Well, the stakes couldn't be higher. Following weeks of personal attacks on the Democratic candidate, Kamala Harris is set to come face-to-face with her rival for the White House in just a few hours' time in a clash that could prove pivotal. They're meeting for what could possibly be their only TV debate of the campaign to showcase their starkly different visions for the country after a tumultuous summer, in a contest that could come down to tens of thousands of votes in a handful of states. Even a small shift in public opinion could alter the outcome of the election. With the latest on the highly anticipated clash between Harris and Donald Trump, here's Antonia Kerrigan.
Extremely tight in the polls, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are now counting down to their live debate in Philadelphia. The format of the showdown has been the result of much negotiation. 90 minutes of debate time on ABC News, with no live audience in the room, structured by moderators asking questions, and each candidate afforded a fixed allowance of answer time, rebuttal time, and follow-up, clarification or response time. Candidates will be armed with only pen, paper and a bottle of water, and there will be no lifelines. Prepared notes are strictly prohibited, as is consulting with campaign staff during the ad breaks. The date and host channel were agreed on in May by the Trump and Biden campaigns. But after wrangling in recent weeks, it's almost a surprise the debate is going ahead at all. In early August, Republican candidate Donald Trump said he was pulling the plug. Soon after, it became apparent that his opponent would be Vice President Harris instead of outgoing President Biden, calling instead for an alternative date on Fox News. The former president confirmed his participation at the end of August, but has continued to insist the process is rigged against him, like at a town hall on the Fox News channel last week.
John, ABC is the worst network in terms of fairness. They are the most dishonest network, the meanest, the nastiest, but that was what I was presented with. I was presented with ABC.
Meanwhile, his opponent appears quietly confident.
Are you ready, Madam Vice President?
Ready.
Despite not having entirely got her way either. Originally, the Biden campaign demanded that mics be off, except when the candidate has the floor, perhaps for fear that Biden be distracted by interruptions. But the Harris campaign wanted both mics on, so the former prosecutor could shine by shutting down any interruptions and put the spotlight on any loss of composure by her opponent. Her campaign eventually relented on the demand, but put it in writing that they consider the mics off rule puts her at a disadvantage.
For more on the debate, we're joined now by Jordan Cash, Assistant Professor of Political Science at Michigan State University. Thank you so much for being with us on the programme this evening, Jordan. Firstly, opinion polls suggesting the race is neck and neck. Just how pivotal is this debate, and what are you expecting in terms of how the two candidates will perform?
It is quite pivotal given how close the polls have been lately, and the fact that this might be the only debate that the two candidates have. So this is really the only chance that Americans will have, that we know of, to see how they'll perform. And especially for Kamala Harris, I think there's a bit more at stake given that she hasn't done many media appearances. She hasn't really gone off script. So this might be the only chance that Americans have to see Kamala Harris and how she performs under pressure without a teleprompter. I think it's a little bit less for Trump, but definitely with the polls as close as they are, this might be the one opportunity that either campaign has to break away. As to what we should expect, I would anticipate that, as was mentioned earlier, having the mics off will probably help Trump. It'll help him be more disciplined, like he was in the first debate against Joe Biden. I would also anticipate that Trump is likely to try to tie Harris more to the Biden administration, to really emphasize that the policies of the Biden administration are the Biden-Harris policies, particularly on immigration, inflation, the economy generally. With Harris, I would expect her to focus more on character issues to the extent that she's going to focus on policy. I would imagine she's going to emphasize Trump's positions, mainly previous positions on abortion, since Trump has tried to moderate in recent weeks, but also introducing herself and trying to draw a personality contrast with Trump. That so far has been her main line in the campaign, is to show herself as what's often called the vibe shift or good vibes candidate. And I imagine she'll try to do that again and emphasize Trump's abrasive personality and perhaps even bring up his felony convictions from a few months ago.
And do you think she's likely to come under pressure then for backtracking, as some would have it, over Liberal policies she'd previously championed? If we talk about things like fracking, immigration, nationalising health insurance, how do you think that's going to play for her?
Yeah, I imagine that will be a big part of the debate. Trump, in particular, I think, is going to focus on that and try to demonstrate that Harris has, you might say, changed or flip-flopped on the issues a fair bit. And considering that Harris, again, hasn't been out in public that much in an unscripted way, and when she has been asked on these questions, like at her CNN interview about a week ago, she didn't have a great answer for it. And she's really going to have to figure out how to answer for these perceived inconsistencies, why the Harris running now in 2024 is different from the Harris that ran in 2019, 2020, because Trump is going to hammer her on that. And I imagine she really needs to have a clear answer if she's going to try to introduce herself to the American public while she's under pressure and draw that contrast with Trump.
And what about policy issues? Who do you think is likely to be stronger when it comes to things like the economy, immigration, abortion? Do you expect that we're going to see a lot of detail revealed in those particular areas during the debate?
I honestly would not look for a lot of detail. So far, neither candidate has been very specific on their plans for any of those policy areas. I will say when it comes to the polling, right now, Trump is leading on who Americans trust for the economy, for inflation, for immigration, while Harris leads on who Americans trust to handle abortion issues. So I wouldn't imagine that there's going to be terribly much specifics, but they're definitely going to play to their strengths.
And how would you defeat a debater like Donald Trump? His performance, it did go under the radar during the debate against Joe Biden following that catastrophic debate for Joe Biden, but it's going to be an entirely different ballgame this evening, isn't it?
It certainly is, and that's a big question. How do you defeat Donald Trump in a debate? So far, perhaps the best strategy, and the one that it seems Harris might go based on some of the rumblings and rumors going around, is that really the only way you beat Donald Trump in a debate is to let him defeat himself. That is more or less what happened in 2020 when he debated Joe Biden, that he came in very aggressive, as I think most acknowledge, too aggressive in his debates with Joe Biden, and that really turned a lot of Americans off. So I would imagine, and I think that's why Harris wanted the hot mics on, so then Trump could, again, kind of let him talk, let him interrupt, let him get rattled, and he tends to maybe not be as cohesive or as presidential when he gets in such a position. So I imagine Harris is going to have a very difficult time doing that with the mics off. It's and without a live audience, the stage is kind of set up against her in that way. But she's going to have to find a way to rattle Trump and get him to get off his game a little bit, get him off balance.
And are we likely to see, do you think, Harris, the prosecutor, go after Trump, the felon? And if she does take that stance, do you think it risks making her look like she's coming across as being less presidential?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I do think we're going to see Harris take that line of attack. She's been doing that in her speeches recently. I don't know that it would make her seem less presidential insofar as she tries to make that case. It would, I think, remind Americans that Trump is, again, a controversial figure, has had these legal problems. Trump, I think, would, and that might be one way to rattle him, because I think Trump is very defensive over what he sees as politically motivated legal attacks. So that might be one way to do it. I don't think it will make Harris look presidential, but it may take the focus off of what Americans are probably more interested in, which is to hear what she's actually bringing to the table.
And those Americans, they will remember how Donald Trump came across when he debated against Hillary Clinton last time round. Do you think he's in danger of damaging his support among female voters this time if he comes across as badgering his opponent? He has been quite critical of Kamala Harris in recent weeks.
Yes, and that's the risk to Trump. And again, I think one of those things that if you get him off balance and rattle him and he starts making personal attacks, that's the risk. For Trump, he really needs to focus on the policy issues where polls say he is stronger than Harris, tying Harris to what are perceived as unpopular policies of the Biden administration. If he gets into the personal stuff, starts going after Harris personally, I think that's where he does start to look unpresidential. He looks like he's badgering, as you said. and risks making her look like the more presidential candidate, the one who's cool under fire.
And do you think that the debate, it could end up swinging voters in any particular direction? I guess that is the big question. And it comes before, just days before early voting gets underway in certain states.
I think so. I mean, like I said earlier, this is really the only time, well, likely to be the only time that we see these two on the same stage, unscripted, and actually speaking with each other. And I think for a lot of Americans who are undecided, this is where they're going to make up their minds. And with early voting starting so soon, again, this is probably the last shot that either campaigns have to really make a breakaway. Of course, there's a long time until November, but with early voting coming up, if you want to put yourself in a more secure position, this is the time to do it.
And Jordan, do you think there'll be a clear winner if we were talking to you this time tomorrow evening? Will there be a clear winner coming out of this debate, do you believe?
That's a very good question. I hesitate to say there'll be a clear winner, but I would not be surprised if there is a clear winner. I think it's going to come down to which candidate keeps their cool, is able to stay on message, not get rattled by the other candidate. And whoever can do that, I think, will look like the winner.
Who do you think that winner is going to be, if we could put it to you?
Oh, man, if you had to put it to me now, I will say, given Trump's track record, I think he's coming in from a position of strength. The fact that Harris has not had a lot of these unscripted moments, and when she has, she hasn't done particularly well. The debates in 2019 when she was running for president for the 2020 cycle didn't go well for her. So history, I would say, would give the edge to Trump. But again, that's with limited information on what Harris can do. And we've never seen her in a one-on-one debate like this since 2020. And she did fairly well against Mike Pence. If I had to pick one, I'd say the edge is to Trump. But that's very, very slight.
We'll find out how it all plays out in a few hours' time. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us. That's Jordan Cash, Assistant Professor of Political Science at Michigan State University. Well, that is it from us for now. Do stay with us, though. We'll be back shortly with more world news.